Hey folks, John with Complete Technology Solutions, your friend in the computer business. So today what we're going to do is we're going to answer one of the most commonly asked questions for the Raspberry Pi game systems or for RetroPie in general. So actually we're going to answer two of them, and these are the primary ones I get all the time. It will make your life a whole lot easier on them. Here we go. Okay, guys, so as you can see on Stumpy over here, you guys have seen this image 1,000 times. It's the same one that I've used forever. I've just actually, collectively added and subtracted from it over the years. Now, I want to point out, though, that I'm going to show you how to add and remove the games from the system, but finding the ROMs is your own choice. Now, I got to tell you, I can't tell you where to get them, but I can tell you that if you go out and Google Nintendo ROMs or arcade ROMs or whatever, you'll go down a rabbit hole that will lead you to what you're looking for. I will say be very careful with those sites, though. They are loaded with spyware, and one wrong click and your system goes patoot. You guys know how that goes. So, all right, so the first question that I get asked all the time, how do I connect this up to my network? Now, there are a couple of ways you can connect it to your network. First of all, as most people know, and I'm going to try to raise this up here. I've actually got it plugged in, obviously. All right, so hopefully Stumpy is picking this up here. So on the front of this, actually, you've got a LAN port right here. Now, there's two ways to connect a B3+. You can either go with the hardwired LAN, which is what we've got in here now, or you can connect up via the Wi-Fi. Either way will work out just fine. Now, for this video, what we're going to do is I'm going to disconnect the LAN cable, and we are going to connect the Wi-Fi up to the Wi-Fi here in the building so that I can show you how to transfer the games over your Wi-Fi, because that's, my guess is that's probably the most common way most of you guys are going to do this. All right. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have a keyboard. And generally speaking, RetroPie is not regionally set when you first get it. So you've got to set your region. So we're going to try to do a little bit of creative camera work here, guys, because I really want you to be able to see what we're typing. First thing, connect up your keyboard to your Raspberry. Does not matter which port. All right, once you're currently in RetroPie, as you can see we are here, you're going to hit F4 on your keyboard. And that's actually going to drop you down to the command line, okay? Now at this point is sudo, S-U-D-O, raspi-config. Okay, so S-U-D-O, raspi-config. All right, and I got to tell you guys, it's got to be exactly like that, otherwise it won't do anything. All right, it's going to take you into this screen right here, and let's make sure Stumpy's focused on it. Okay, what you're looking for first, right off the bat, now this is for Wi-Fi. If you hook it up to your LAN cable, it's just automatically going to configure. You won't have to do this. But for Wi-Fi, you've got to go through these steps. You're going to want to go down to localization options, okay? In localization options, you're going to change the Wi-Fi country. Now, in here is where you'll set US. Now, you can actually hit U and go down to United States, all right? Now, you don't just press enter here, guys. That's a common mistake. Once you're on United States, you'll hit tab on your keyboard to go down to OK, and then you'll hit OK. Then it will set your Wi-Fi country, okay? Now, from this point, you're ready to set the Wi-Fi up in RetroPie. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and we're going to tab down here. We're going to go to Finish, and we're going to press Enter. All right, now what that's going to do is it's going to take us back out to our command prompt, and we have a couple options at that point. You can either type in a reboot command, or you can actually just turn off the computer and see, we're actually at a command prompt right there. It dropped us right down to it. All right. So the command prompt, if you want to use a command to actually reboot, and I'll get Stumpy on there, is sudo, S-U-D-O, space reboot. One word. And that will actually reboot the entire computer, okay, as you can see. Now, once this reboots into RetroPie, then we're going to go into the settings, and we're going to set the Wi-Fi and put in your password. Hang tight. Let me get this rebooted. All right. As you guys can see, we are actually rebooted now. Okay, so what we're going to do is for this, we're going to go ahead and use the controller. Now, we could use the keyboard to actually navigate, but we're not going to use that right now. So, if you're using an image like mine, where you've actually got all the game systems listed, this is alphabetical. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to the Setup folder, all right? And it doesn't really matter what version of RetroPie, if you build your own image or whatever, it's always going to be called Setup, all right? So we're going to go in here. We're going to go down to the very bottom here. And the bottom is Wi-Fi. Okay, as you can see, we're going to go into the Wi-Fi. Now, in here is where you're going to select your network. Now, it is incredibly important that you do the first step first and set your area. Otherwise, none of the networks will show up right here. So we're going to connect to a Wi-Fi network. And as you can see, it's got an entire list of networks right there, guys. We're actually going to connect to the CTS playtime. Okay. We're going to go into that one. And we're going to type in the password. By the way, this is the flea market's network for gaming and all that. So, all right. Once you type in your password, it will now connect you to the internet. It will tell you what your IP address is. Now, that's somewhat important, but not totally important. And you'll understand why here in just a second. All right, connecting to the network. And as you can see right up here, and hopefully Stumpy is getting that, you actually now have a current IP address. And this will, now you can access the Raspberry using that IP address, but there's a much easier way, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But for right now, we're going to go to the right, go to exit. And right now, this Raspberry is on the network. So in other words, if you went to the Kodi player on this, you could actually access the internet using Kodi. So now what we're going to do is, in order to transfer files back and forth off of this, I'm going to switch over to the PC now. I've got this actually on the same screen, so we're going to switch over to the PC. Now, I want to illustrate why it is so important to do this. You cannot just put the SD card from a Raspberry into a PC, and I'm going to show you why. Let me show you here. We're going to center that up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is a raw image from the exact same image that we've got on this system right now, okay? And what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to connect this into the system, and let's see what it actually tells you that it is, because this is very interesting. All right. And you heard it identify. Too many mice, man. All right, you'll see it identified it as boot. All right. As you can see, there are no folders in here, the game ROMs. That's because RetroPie by default breaks it into two partitions. One is a hidden partition where all the games are, and the other one is the boot partition. So you can make configuration changes in here for actually RetroPie, but you cannot add or remove games, affect the audio coming up on the system, change out your intro screens, any of that stuff from right here, okay? So this is why we have to do it the way we did it. Now let me show you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and remove that and save that image over here. All right, here's what we're going to do. Now I want to make sure Stumpy is getting a good view of this. What you're going to do is, on your computer, now this can be any machine. I mean, you could do it, I've done it from XP on up. So in this case, we're on a Windows 10 machine. So we're going to right click, we're going to go to run. Okay, let's make sure she's got that. Yes, she does. We're going to type in / RetroPie, RetroPie, RetroPie. Okay, now you could also type in the IP address of the Raspberry, but we're not going to do that in this particular case. All right, now right now in RetroPie, and hopefully, let me make sure Stumpy has got a good view of that, because it will help you a lot when you are doing your configurations. Okay, so guys, I don't know what that is going to look like. She's having a little trouble focusing on that, so let's hope so. All right, so / RetroPie. I will put that down in the description also. Now, when you press enter on that, what it's going to do is, it's going to access the Raspberry as long as it is on the same network as your computer, and it's going to bring up 4 very critical folders, and I'll show you that. Okay, so as you can see, it's going to bring up 4 critical folders here. Now, this is RetroPie, as you can see. That is the Raspberry. We are talking to the Raspberry right now. Now, the ROMs folder, this is the folder that stores all of your games. Now, you might notice that these folders correspond to the folders that are actually in RetroPie when you go in there. All right, so just to give you an idea of what we're going to do. So we're going to go into arcade, okay? And let's pick one of the first games on there. Let's go to, let's say, 1941, okay? Right here. Now, that game is currently already installed. If you had ROMs, and I don't have any on this system, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over here. Okay, so we moved 1941 out of the RetroPie folder, and we moved it over onto the desktop, okay? So if we go back over here, and we're going to go back over to our RetroPie build, and we're going to go over here to our arcade games. Now, one thing I want to show you, this is critically important. So if we go into Arcade Classics right now, and we go down here, you see it still says 1941. It still thinks the game is there, okay? Watch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to restart Emulation Station. And this is critically important. If you add games or remove games, they will not show up until you reboot Emulation Station. That's very important. All right, here we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the arcade games, and you'll notice 1941. Let me get Stumpy zoomed out here. You'll notice 1941 is now gone from the menu, okay? That's because when it had a reflection of the image on there. Once you rebooted it, it came back up and said, hey, that game no longer exists, okay? So this works with any of the systems. So we're going to go back over to our PC. And by the way, even though we have rebooted RetroPie, you'll notice we are still connected here, okay? Once again, 1941 is still on our desktop because that's where we put it. And all we're going to do is copy or move this folder back into this folder. All right, so 1941 is right there. Okay, we're going to go back over to the Raspberry. And guys, I know this seems a little confusing, but that's because we're bouncing back and forth. Once you're doing it yourself, it's not that confusing, I promise. All right, so as you can see, it's still not there. Why? Because we have to restart Emulation Station. So here we go. Restart, restart. All right, so we're back up now. Let's go back over to our arcade games. And looky there, 1941 has returned. So, going back over to the PC. Now, you know how that works, how to transfer the games across. You want to make absolutely sure that you transfer the right ROMs into the right folders. So if you're downloading PlayStation ROMs, you want to make sure that it goes into the PSX folder. If you're downloading, and once again, we're going to go over here to the ROMs and I'm going to show you. Amiga, Atari 2600, you just want to make sure that you put the right ROMs into the right folder. And most of the time, the ROMs are going to come in a compressed file. It'll be a zip file for each game. Don't uncompress those. Actually transfer the zip file for that game in there. So, all right. And as you can see, they've got them all the way down here. So that's how you add and remove games. So the same thing would go for pulling the games off. If you wanted to create a system that was strictly arcade games, you could go in here and remove every other game system out of here and leave only the arcade games, and that's the only folder that would show up. If you empty a folder, it will no longer show up on that menu in RetroPie. Okay, that's kind of important. So if I emptied out everything out of that arcade folder, don't delete the folder, but empty everything out of it, the arcade folder would not show up on RetroPie. Okay, that's an important one. All right, so a couple other important folders here. The configs, this has to do with the configuration of each individual emulator. Suggestion, don't screw with these because a lot of these are loaded by default on either the image that you get or on RetroPie itself. So you can go into RetroArch and configure all that stuff, but you run a risk of bricking your system, so you want to be real careful with that. The other two that are very important, the BIOS. If you are running, this is not so incredibly important on some of the OSs, but like PlayStation, they actually have the PS BIOS that has to be downloaded in here so that it actually, when it plays it, it refers back to that BIOS. And as far as the machine is concerned, it's a PlayStation. That's the way the emulator works. So that's what these are. And you'll see in here, you've got all kinds of different BIOSes for pretty much every system that's on here, okay? Splash screens. Now, the splash screens are where you're going to load your intros, okay? So what'll happen is, anytime that you boot it up, it'll have a different splash screen that you can build in there. You can build these yourselves, guys. They can be standard MP4 files. So if you want to build a whole elaborate, it's my system, I came in, put family pictures or whatever, you can do that. Dump it into this folder, clear out all the other ones, and then when you boot this thing up, that's the only thing that will play. So that's pretty cool. So a lot of you notice when you come in, you see different ones that are appearing on the game systems. Well, that's where it comes from, is this particular folder. So it's very, very cool. All right, so I want to give you guys, so now you understand the concept of transferring the games back and forth and why you have to use your network to do it. Be real careful when you're deleting stuff from these folders, guys, because it is possible to damage the system and honestly even to brick it. And if that ever happens, then of course you got to reload it and start over again. So not that that's complicated. We'll do another video about that someday here in the future. Now I want to give you guys another quick trip. This is the bonus tip anytime you're dealing with RetroPie. So we're going to go back over to our RetroPie system. if I can actually click at the right rate here. There we go. You'll notice I put the PC and this back on this individually instead of having a computer sitting over there. So, all right. So just for giggles, let's say we go to the all games folder, okay? Now, this folder is massive, guys. You're talking, thousands and thousands of games. In order to jump to a specific section, what you want to do is you want to press your back button, and it'll bring up a menu. You simply type in the letter you want to jump to. Like, say we want to see if Xevious is on here. So let's jump down to X. Now, you could theoretically scroll through this whole list if you wanted to. X, and then press A, and it will jump down to the X's. And then from there, you can just scroll down and find the one you want to. X-Men, so on and so forth. They're all on here. So, once again, the back button, select the letter, press A, jumps to it in the list. A whole lot quicker. So guys, this has been kind of a short video. I wanted to give you a tip on how to do this stuff. The internet is particularly important the network is particularly important if you're jumping on the internet with these. If you're using Kodi, if you're using Twister OS or Raspbian or any of the other desktop emulation kind of operating systems, you have to have the internet, and that's the way you access it. Now, on some versions of the desktops, it's just like Windows. You'll click up on the networks and then set your network, and that's it. But for this particular, for RetroPie, that's the way to do it. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. I've got another big one coming up here pretty quick. If I get any other requests on how to do things on RetroPie, let me know, and I'll make a specific video just for you on it. Have a fantastic week and a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.